First topic we're going to get to. This happened a day and a half ago,
Yes.
night and a half ago. It all has to do with an anchor woman in Atlanta who clapped back,
Bam,
aka responded to a nasty viewer. I mean, I would
Racist
say,
troll.
let's
is
just
what I
call
would
it
call
that,
her.
racist troll.
Yes.
All because of what?
Yes. So Sharon Reed is the anchor that we're talking about. She's at CBS 46 in Atlanta. Beautiful woman, great journalist. Then a troll comes into her email, and I want to bring up what it said to you.
And this is when the new mayor was announced.
Yes. Okay.
Correct?
So backstory.
Yes.
Atlanta just had a mayoral election. The person that came out on top was a black woman, strong candidate. She won, but then there were issues about whether race came into play with the election. The woman who lost was a white woman, wanted a recount of the votes.
Which we know will take some time.
It will take some time. Sharon came on air and said there's something. The viewer implied that Sharon came on air and said there are some things that white people can say that black people can't. Sharon did not say this, but the Twitter troll went in, calling her an N-word in this email, saying that she's what's wrong with the world. But
typed
in
out
a funny,
the N-word.
She
right?
did type out the N-word, but here's the funny thing. Wasn't educated enough to spell the word correctly.
1G.
Really?
So she called her a country in Africa.
Right, Niger.
Yes, exactly.
You can say Niger.
You can
It's
say
a country in
Niger.
You can
Africa,
say
but we know
Niger.
what you're
But-
saying with that. That is incredible. Okay, keep going with the story.
The most incredible part is how Sharon clapped back.
In the camera, so close.
Just
all up
like
in it. I
this.
was like,
Came at her in the camera and said, you know what? Essentially, you are not worth the skin on both of my hands to give you a solid clap back. What I'm just going to do is say, you're wrong in this situation. We're here of mixed race on our panel
you're missing the point.
to
Yeah.
talk about issues that impact this community. You are clearly not part of this conversation.
And there was a diverse panel, if you will,
Yes.
who were having this discussion post-election because of the desire for a recount from the other mayor.
Yes.
And that's when they said, we're going to go there with a conversation because it's sort of the elephant in the room. Like, let's go there, let's talk about it. So they did, and of course, people got upset with that, and that's when these nasty people just came out. Because regardless of how you stand politically, when you bring race into it, it's going to divide people
Right.
for whatever
do we have the
reason.
video?
Yeah, do we have the video of the anchor woman's response?
Because it's great. I can bring it up if not.
But anywho, I guess the topic today is less about the mayoral race. So we're looking
Right.
at it now.
Ah,
Okay,
there
so
we go.
there is the anchor. Do we have sound on this, or it's just the article?
Down
Okay.
farther in the article, there is the video if we did want to play it. But it is incredible.
Oh, she does. She ends up using the full N word
exactly.
on air.
Oh,
so we, don't
so
wanna
we
play
can't
it here.
play it on air. But
Right.
the class that she had in her response to this clear racist
It was
comment
sassy,
was
but it was classy.
so classy and on point, and I applaud her for that.
Yeah. It's just sad that that's where we are still at here in America, and even a woman
Right.
who wins a mayoral race who is black, and then an anchor woman who is black in an area of our country, you know, that is a diverse part, but it is
Right.
still the South.
Right. So I can speak to that. I went to grad school at Mississippi State.
Okay.
In a small town in Mississippi, in northern Mississippi called Starkville. And, I'm from California. And California is a very diverse state, just by nature. And you know what? The South is very diverse as well. A lot of people don't know that.
Right. I went to school in the South too.
Yeah, where did
Very
you
nice.
go?
I lived there,
Wake Forest
right?
in North Carolina.
Okay, so
Okay.
there we go. And what I found very interesting is right away in the beginning, the whole history of the South and my interaction with the South was that
As a white
the
male.
race, yes, the race issue was always there, just underneath the surface. There were a lot of things said to me that were said to me one way and said to somebody else another way.
Interesting.
I immediately was confronted with very awkward situations that you guys know me, right? Okay, and you're just getting to know me. I mean,
So far, I like you
Yeah,
this far.
exactly. I mean, I just am not. I'm not that way.
You just almost don't see
ex-
color. Like to you, it's like
I don't. I really don't. And getting confronted with that, you get confronted with. I wanted to say so many things, like, excuse me, don't talk to me that way. But then you end up in this situation where oftentimes where you really feel like you should say something, you don't.
Right.
And that's why it persists. Because in these moments, I was not courageous or strong enough to then make it an issue with individuals that I didn't know. and it continued for years, for the 2 years that I was there. So you just have to know that, in the whole country as a whole, but especially in the Deep South,
Right.
it is always under the surface. It is the way that every single issue is viewed one way or the other, is through the prism, through the lens of your race and your interactions with others, is an eye-opening experience, to say the least. But I'm not surprised that this conversation is probably the topic in Atlanta, because Atlanta is a city that is very diverse and very segregated, to be honest with you.
Yep.
The demographics of Atlanta are incredible. If you wanted to chart it out on a map, you can see some people live here and some people live there for various reasons, but the reality is that conversation is coming to a head in Atlanta, and I'm not surprised at all.
The 2 female leads, I mean, you talk about a mayor, so someone who's in power, and then you talk about an anchor woman who I consider us as people are representatives of our community, right?
Right,
We're
of course.
people who we're standing there every day. We hope that you trust us in delivering you the news. That's a form of power in its own right. And so the fact that they were able to cross boundaries and break barriers and get to where they're at, but they're still trying to be dragged down.
It's horrible.
Right.
It's terrible. It's
and
sad.
Because in the eye of that individual, the troll that wrote that comment, that the anchor can never be anything more than that to them. It doesn't matter
Doesn't
what
how
they do.
talented she is
that
beautiful she is, right?
you are this, and that's all you'll ever be. And to write it is one thing, because there's some some amount of being anonymous.
Sure.
But for the anchor to take it on, she had the courage to say, this
Yeah.
is
Yes.
wrong, and I'm telling it to your face, and we are all witnesses in this conversation because it's on TV.
Right.
I mean, I can only imagine in the background the courage to do something like that.
Yeah.
And the support of her coworkers that really
country.
took.
Right.
That too. And just, you hope that every day when you watch the news, the people that are delivering it are in a good situation where they're
Right.
not impacted by their environment, so they can deliver you the news clearly. But for Sharon, that was a tough day for her, and she still came out on top.
And here's what may happen. That email has been sent, I'm sure, by different people, but with the same pretext to many people working in TV and others. And maybe this is another movement where people say, I'm not taking it anymore.
Right.
Because we saw that with a recent movement with misconduct,
Yeah, right.
sexual misconduct.
Right, once
And
it all comes out,
Exactly.
was 1 person, 2 people, 100 people.
Because it is under the surface, or in some cases it's brought to the surface, but it's a conversation that maybe people are ready to have again. We've had it multiple times, but
Yeah.
clearly the conversation is not over.
It's interesting that it's in Atlanta because Donald Glover put out the show Atlanta, speaking about what Black lives are like in Atlanta and the struggles that they face. But also, I just think about how the entertainment industry in Atlanta is growing. And
Yes.
what's his name?
CNN is headquartered there.
Perry.
HLN is headquartered there. Tyler Perry.
Tyler Perry
His shows.
basically makes most of his
Yeah.
movies in Atlanta, trying to develop the Black community there. And I think about how strong the Black community is there, and then I forget
But there is
that
that
there
other
is
side.
that struggle that they still have, and this brought it to the forefront. So I hope that, like you were saying, more people stand up and speak against the negative people, the racist people in their neighborhoods, so that hopefully one
Yeah.
day, and this sounds like the beauty
Right.
queen pulling
Well,
out
no,
of me, world peace
World
one
peace.
day.
But I'll ask you, and it's coming from a diverse woman to another diverse
Yeah.
woman. Have you faced any challenges having lived in the South, and how did you handle them?
I honestly didn't. I don't
Yeah.
think that I did. Wake Forest, for me, was incredibly tolerant. We have a pro humanitate motto. So humanity for all, that's what we believe in. And I just felt very safe there. But I do understand that other people felt disenfranchised. I'm a Hispanic woman who joined a historically Black sorority at Wake Forest campus. A few years later, when a white woman joined our sorority, there was a lot of chatter about the topic. And that was the first time, I wasn't at the school anymore, but that was the first time that I had seen for myself that sort of racial tension at the school. What's it like now? I'm not completely sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But for me, I can only speak to my experiences, and I had a great experience there, and I haven't dealt with a lot of racism in my life.
And people will ask me that as well, because having been there as an Army brat, we lived in Fort Rucker, Alabama. So yes, very deep South, but we were on a base. We were on a military base where, much like California, it is a melting pot
Right.
of all different cultures, creeds, colors, you name it.
Right.
And so I remember, and I was a kid, I was there for 4 years, but 7 years old, I remember we would go outside of the base, of course, to go to Dothan Mall or wherever we would, Enterprise, Enterprise, Dothan.
The peanut capital of America.
Oh.
Is this true?
Yes, it is.
Why
do
do
you
you
know
know this?
At grad school,
Right.
I did weather with a guy named Josh Johnson, and he was, the high end whatever, and he goes,
Yeah.
Dothan, peanut capital
Fun.
of America, and I
Fun
was like,
fact.
I always remember that. Anyway, that is
fun.
totally irrelevant.
The
which
fact
is,
that I didn't
I
go
bring
to a peanut
irrelevance to
fact.
this show. Anyway,
You bring fun facts.
Yes, you do.
No, but the fact, I remember, and it's the vaguest of memories because I was so young and I didn't understand racial inequality at the time. But my family looks much like me. We're dark skin complected and family of 4, and we'd go outside to the mall, and I remember maybe and it's very vague again, and I don't know if this is something that like in my head I go, okay, I remember that, but just feeling like there were always eyes, like just eyes on, and we would travel, I felt like in like a little Forest Center, wherever we go, and it could be just because I was a kid and I stayed close to mom and dad, but
Right.
that's like the only experience I remember. My first best friend was Karina Brown. She was an African-American girl, and I remember going to their church. And it
that's
was
an
my
experience.
first experience, and I will never, till the end of days, forget the clapping,
Oh,
the,
yes.
the
shouting.
falling on the floor, and I just felt like it was cool to me to be part of that culture. But that's my experience with it. So I hope these are signs that in 2017 we are progressively moving. Well, we are progressing, but then you see something like this and you go, oh, there are those trolls out there who have the power, though, through social media. Would that person have ever said that to the anchor's face? Should she have been in
Never.
person? No.
Never.
So
Never.
I hope that is why it is so easy to get in touch. But the fact that the anchor woman had the power to be on her desk and say what she wanted to say and handle it with class.
Kudos
so
to
good
you.
for her. I'm trying to see if you guys are chiming in on this. Your mom says she loves the name Arena for your drink.
Thank you.
Hello, Mrs. Daytil. And let's see, Aviatrix,
golden
Flying High
rule.
Brown. Good morning.
Look at this, Reggie Cepeda, the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yes, Reggie.
Of course, Reggie.
Yes,
That's what we can only
yes,
hope for all
yes.
people.
Yes, we do. And I like the motto from your school. That's very cool.
Yes.